What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I have an interesting video for you today, and it's focusing on Anthony Richardson, a very polarizing prospect, and the Colts offense overall, and what to expect in fantasy football from the Colts passing offense specifically. Now, Anthony Richardson, again, very polarizing, extremely talented quarterback, very good draft capital. And in terms of him as a fantasy player, I'm actually very excited about. He's a guy in my redraft leagues, dynasty leagues, I'm going to be targeting because he has that high end potential because he's probably going to run for at least 800 yards, maybe more. He has the talent to be that 1,000-yard rusher like we've seen with Lamar Jackson, like we've seen with Justin Fields. And these guys, because they rush for 1,000 yards, they don't need to pass for much. So Anthony Richardson in fantasy football, I'm not worried about, even in year one. I'm going to take a chance on him. This is more looking at what to expect from passing from Anthony Richardson and how that affects the pass catchers in the Colts offense. And there's some intriguing ones. We have Michael Pittman, of course. Alec Pierce, who people liked going into last year, flashed a little bit in a couple of games last year. Colts were kind of a train wreck. Josh Downs as well, who's getting a lot of hype. Reggie Wayne coming out and saying he was the best rookie receiver at the combine. What to expect from these guys with Anthony Richardson as the starting quarterback. And we're going to assume he's going to start week one and he's going to play 17 games. I really don't think there's any other way to kind of project this. So obviously, these numbers are different if he doesn't start, if he gets hurt, all these things. But we're going to just assume he's going to start. He's going to play 17 games. And we're going to look at what to expect from that. So we're going to get right into it. Real quick before I start looking at some numbers. Anthony Richardson, just to kind of refresh his passing stats for his basically only year starting and playing in college football. He completed 53.8% of his passes. He had 2,550 for passing yards, 2,550 passing yards. Those were his college numbers. Now, we need to figure out what is he going to do in the NFL. And I think to start, we need to do a baseline of how many passes are the Colts going to throw per game. And to figure that out, I looked at Jalen Hurts' numbers from his basically first year starting. Now, I know he played, 3 or 4 games in 2020. In 2021 was really his first year, started preseason. Let me get rid of that overlay. Started, preseason as the number one guy. Started, I believe, almost every game. Might have gotten hurt a couple games, but he was the starter from week one. And the reason why I'm using Jalen Hurts is not just because he's a rushing quarterback because he runs the ball, but also because Shane Steichen, who is the head coach of the Colts, was Jalen Hurts' offensive coordinator in 2021 and 2022. And Shane Steichen is now the head coach of the Colts. So if we look at 2021, weeks 1 through 7, the Eagles were passing the hell out of the ball. Almost 35 pass attempts per game. And the Eagles were not winning games. If you guys remember, in 2021, those first 7 games, they were 2-5. They were 2-5. The fans were booing them, wanting them to run the ball. They would cheer whenever they would run the ball. Everyone would be cheering. And everyone was saying, why aren't the Eagles running the ball more? They were 2-5, 35 pass attempts a game, and then they had an offensive change, a philosophy change. Weeks 8 through 18. So these are 11 games here. 10 games, because there's a bye week in there. 10 games, 24 pass attempts per game. The Eagles went 7-3 over these 10 games, I believe, because they finished 9-8, and they made the playoffs. And I think this is very important because I think Shane Steichen kind of learned a little bit. He grew as an offensive coordinator a bit there, basically saying, Jalen Hurts was kind of a work in progress with his passing. We saw improvements in 2022, of course, but that first year they were throwing the ball way too much. Jalen Hurts was not the best passer in the league. And then they had a philosophy change. They were running the ball more. They had 10 less pass attempts per game, and they were winning games. And I think it's important because I think this is how Shane Steichen, there's a good chance this is how he approaches Anthony Richardson and the offense overall for the Colts. So we're going to assume that Anthony Richardson and the Colts are going to pass the ball 25 attempts per game. Okay. Now, before we get into Anthony Richardson's numbers, we're going to look at some rookie numbers. Rookie averages since the year 2000 of 100. You need to, in order to make it on this list, you need to have completed 100 passes, which is about 4 or 5 games worth, and be a first-round draft pick. And I believe there's about 40-ish, 35 to 40 guys that meet this criteria. Rookie quarterbacks who completed 100 passes in their rookie year and were first-round draft picks. Their average completion percentage was 58.5%. I think the highest was like 66%. Lowest was like low 50s. So average is 58.5%. Average yards per completion was 7. Average yards per completion was 7. I thought I was going to say something else, but I didn't. Average touchdown percentage, 3.6%. So these are kind of average rookie numbers. Now, we're going to give benefit of the doubts. We're going to give Anthony Richardson a little boost in a couple of these numbers. We're going to give him a 60% completion percentage. We're going to stick with the 7 yards per completion, average yards per completion. We're going to stick with that. I know, by the way, 60% completion percentage would be by far his highest in his career. I think he was 50. We just said he was 53% in college. We're boosting him by almost 7%, which is kind of crazy because most of the time from last year in college to first year in the NFL, your completion percentage drops. It doesn't increase. But we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Shane Steichen's going to know how to use him, put him in the best situation possible, and we're going to give him a 60% completion percentage, which is still pretty low. We're going to keep the 7 yards per completion, and we're going to give him a 4% touchdown percentage. So we're actually boosting his numbers a little bit here. So if we look at Anthony Richardson, what does that mean for a 17-game season? Again, passing the ball, 25 pass attempts per game. What does that mean for him? Well, that means they're going to throw the ball 425 times. He's going to complete 255. He's going to have 255 completions. That's 60%. And he's going to have a 7 yards per completion, which gives him just under 3,000 yards passing. A 4% touchdown percentage gives him 17 passing touchdowns. Okay? You see here, 60% completion, 7 yards per attempt. 7 yards per attempt, and 4% touchdown rate. Those are the numbers we're going with here. Not the greatest passing numbers. Now, what does that mean for the pass catchers? If we scroll down and we look, you got to assume that running backs and tight ends are going to make up at least 30% of the target share. I think that's what the Eagles were last year. They were like 12% target share to running backs, which is, I think, the lowest in the NFL. And then they were like 18, 19% to I think they were about 70%. They were very heavy towards their receivers. 70% of their target share went to their receivers. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So we're going to assume about 30% of the target share is going to go to the running backs and tight ends. And I think that's even a little low. I think most NFL teams are around 35 to 40%. But again, we're giving kind of high expectations, what to expect at the most, so you can kind of base it from there. 30% target share, that means 900 yards of Anthony Richardson's essentially 3,000 passing yards are going to running backs and tight ends. So that basically rules out any tight end that you want from the Colts offense is probably not going to do much because they're going to, at most, get 500-600 yards at most, right? I mean, then the running backs are going to get 300-400 yards, you're basically saying. So you're probably looking closer to like 450 or 500 yards for tight ends. So nothing there at the tight ends, and not even for the running backs. Nothing there for Jonathan Taylor. Maybe you can think of 250 receiving yards is what you're kind of hoping for. Now we look at Michael Pittman. And if we give Michael Pittman a 25% target share, and that would be the highest in his career, by the way. Last year, he was around 23% target share in 2022. 2021, he was at 24.8%. It was his target share. Let's give him a 25% target share, which is pretty high. There's not many receivers each year. There's a handful of receivers, maybe a dozen receivers each year that hit that 25% target share. If we give that to Michael Pittman, based on Anthony Richardson's passing numbers, again, which are right here, 3,000 yards, 17 passing touchdowns. If we get him a 25% target share, that gives him 106 targets. That gives him 73 catches because his career catch percentage is 68.6%. So basing it off his career catch percentage, that gives him 73 catches for 744 yards. Not exciting numbers at all. 73 catches, 744 yards. You're going to need 10 touchdowns in order to be fantasy relevant. You're going to need 10 of 17 passing touchdowns that we're projecting him for to be fantasy relevant. Not exciting at all. And that's even less exciting for Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. Even if it's funneled between those three receivers, Pittman, Downs, and Alec Pierce, you're still looking at only about 1,300 yards left for the rest of the receiving core. So if they split those, you're looking at 650 yards for Josh Downs, 650 yards for Alec Pierce. You're not looking at very good numbers at all. So we need to temper our expectations for the pass catchers. I'm not very high on Michael Pittman. I'm not high on Josh Downs and Alec Pierce this year. I'm just not. The math just doesn't add up. Now, if you think Anthony Richardson's going to be a unicorn and he's going to throw for 4,000 yards, be my guest and throw 25 touchdowns. Be my guest and draft these guys. But the math just doesn't add up. He's not everything that's said about him is he's a very raw passer. He's one of the most raw passers to come out and be drafted this high ever. And so just to expect him to jump up in completion percentage from 53% in college his first year, to expect the Colts to pass more than 450 times, really, I just don't see it. I really, really just don't see it. And even if we give Michael Pittman a 30% target share, I think that's still only about 900 yards. So yeah, better, but not wide receiver 1 territory. Maybe not even kind of a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3/flex guy. That's where we should be drafting Michael Pittman this year in fantasy football. And Josh Downs and Alec Pierce in redraft, I'm probably not going to be drafting either one of those guys. Maybe as a late-round flyer and hoping that, not hoping, but, thinking that, well, if Michael Pittman gets hurt, one of these guys needs to catch some balls, right? I'm not interested in any of the tight ends. I'm not interested in Michael Pittman outside of him being like a wide receiver 3/flex guy. I'm not interested in Josh Downs, not interested in Alec Pierce. Of course, Jonathan Taylor I'm interested in, but that's more for his rushing ability than his pass catching ability. I expect him to catch 30 passes, 35 passes, and get 250 yards. That's kind of what I'm expecting out of Michael Pittman. And even if you want to increase, some numbers here, you want to say, well, let's give him 7.5 yards per completion instead of 7. 7's low. In college, he had 7.8. 7.8 would be one of the highest in NFL since 2000, would be one of the highest in the NFL for a rookie quarterback. So if we give him 7.5 yards per completion, we're looking at 3,100 passing yards for him. So we're looking at about, 180 more passing yards. We're looking at 795 yards for Michael Pittman at a 25% target share. And we're looking at 795 yards for the running backs and tight ends, and we're looking at 956 yards for Michael Pittman. So if he throws at a 7.5 yards per attempt clip, okay, Michael Pittman's now becoming a little more doable with 950 yards. Hopefully he catches double-digit touchdowns. But I wouldn't go much higher than a 7.5 yards per attempt. I just don't see it. Now, these are all numbers. And I know numbers doesn't really resonate with people very much. We want to see hard facts, right? These are numbers. Like, yeah, you're throwing out all these numbers, but what do they actually mean? We are going to look at quarterbacks since the year 2000 that have started at least 12 games. Quarterbacks since the year 2000 that have started 12 games. There's 31 of them. We have 31 of these guys. Okay, since the year 2000, rookie quarterbacks who've started at least 12 games. And if you look here, I put their best pass catcher and their second best pass catcher. Okay, in the orange, we have guys. Now, I didn't go back and look at where they finished in terms of, they finished wide receiver 30, but knowing fantasy football and kind of knowing what you need to start being fantasy relevant, what numbers a wide receiver 3 puts up, what numbers a wide receiver 2 puts up, what numbers a wide receiver 1 puts up. In orange, I have guys that had wide receiver 3 / flex worthy fantasy seasons. Okay. You see here 54 catches, 800 yards, 4 touchdowns. You're looking at maybe a flex guy. 85 catches, almost 700 yards, 3 touchdowns. Because of the catches, you're looking at probably a flex guy in PPR. 50 catches, 800 yards, 5 touchdowns. You're looking at guys that are going to be started, either spot starters, flex guys, wide receiver 3s, right? In green, I have solid wide receiver, starting wide receiver 2 caliber, maybe low end wide receiver 1, but probably wide receiver 2 caliber fantasy seasons. 80 catches, 1,000 yards. That's wide receiver 2. 80 catches, 1,000 yards. 74 catches, 1,000 yards. You can see the numbers here, guys. You guys can see the numbers. If you can't, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. There we go. You should be able to see those now. So you're looking at, in the green, these are wide receiver 2 fantasy, starting wide receiver fantasy numbers. And then in the yellow, we have like wide receiver 1 numbers. So if we look at the percentages, these again for rookie quarterbacks that have at least 12 starts, 35% of them produced a irrelevant fantasy season. 35% of them produced, again, an irrelevant fantasy season for their top pass catcher. Okay, you can see these guys that aren't highlighted here. 39 catches, 460 yards. 45 catches, 700 yards. 46 catches, 730 yards. These are irrelevant fantasy seasons. I'm sorry, they just are. You're not starting these guys. So 35%, these rookie quarterbacks are giving you pass catchers. 35% of them are irrelevant. 32% of them, they make it into that flex-worthy receiver, wide receiver 3. So that means 67% of receivers who have rookie quarterbacks starting 12 games or more, 67% of them are either fantasy irrelevant or flex worthy at best. Okay, 19% have wide receiver 1 starting caliber seasons. 13% of them, or only 4 since the year 2000, have produced wide receiver 1 caliber seasons. Okay? Temper your expectations for Michael Pittman. Temper your expectations for whoever the second best pass catcher is on the Colts. Because you can see there's only been four flex-worthy seasons of wide receiver 2s. Okay? And real quick, if you look at these wide receiver 1 caliber seasons, you had Matt Ryan, and this was Roddy White. Roddy White, 88 catches, almost 1,400 yards. Roddy White was a proven receiver. He had basically a 1,200-yard, 80-catch season the year before Matt Ryan came. Here, Cam Newton. This was Steve Smith. Steve Smith had put up some monster fantasy seasons in the past, 1,500-yard seasons in the past. Down here, Jameis Winston. This was Mike Evans. This was his Mike Evans' second year. Mike Evans, his rookie year, put up 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. So he was proven fantasy guy. The only guy that you can kind of make comparisons to that made a big jump into like, a wide receiver 2, which is what Michael Pittman's been, into like a wide receiver one is T.Y. Hilton. This was Andrew Luck and T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's best year, I think, was like 1,000 yards, 70 catches, kind of like a Michael Pittman year. And then he jumped to 106 catches, 1,350 yards, 5 touchdowns. But that was with Andrew Luck as your quarterback. People saying like the best quarterback prospect since John Elway, and I don't think there's been a better quarterback prospect since. This guy was a complete quarterback prospect. Anthony Richardson is not. So we really, really need, take anything from this, just temper your expectations in your drafts. Don't overdraft Michael Pittman. I would say don't even draft him as a wide receiver too. Unless you go running back heavy or you take a quarterback, tight end, running backs. And, if Michael Pittman's your wide receiver too because he's the best guy there, fine. Draft him as like, if you're drafting him as, a high-end wide receiver too, I just don't see it. I really, really just don't see it, guys. So that's basically all I have for you today. I just wanted to look at Anthony Richardson, look at the numbers, what to expect from his rookie year. And again, we're kind of expecting a 3,000-yard, 17 touchdown, passing touchdown type of year. Anthony Richardson as a fantasy quarterback, I like. All the pass catchers on the Colts, I really, really don't like unless I'm getting Pittman as like my wide receiver for. So there you have it, guys. That's all I have for you today. We're going to be doing more of these, just kind of looking at some fantasy situations, Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet type of situations where what to expect from these, looking at the numbers, really diving into the numbers. What's the math tell us? And also the hard results. We just started, we saw the math side of it, and we saw from these rookie quarterbacks and their pass catchers, we saw the proof, the hard proof that there's not many wide receiver twos that get drafted or that come from rookie quarterbacks starting. So that's all I have for you guys. Please, if you could like this video, subscribe to the channel. We are 11 subscribers away from 200 subscribers. We're going to be putting out fantasy content all year long, off season, during the season, dynasty and redraft. That's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much. Catch you all next time.